I'll have to use notes, otherwise I'll get scattered and I'll know not what I'm saying. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrew Rhodes. I lived with Michael for the past 6.5 years. I've known him for 56 years. I first met Michael at camp 56 years ago. I was a 14-year-old 4-H camper, and Michael was my very sage 19-year-old camp counselor. From that brief encounter, about a week was all camp lasted, we developed a lifelong friendship. Pardon me. When I decided that I wanted to move to New York, when I was much older than Michael was when he moved there, the first thing Michael said was, "Well, move in with us until you find work, get established." And I did. I stayed there for several months, got my first acting job, went to Rhode Island, had a wonderful summer, came back, found a part-time job, found an apartment, and was eternally grateful to Michael and his partner of the time. 6.5 years ago, I retired from my then full-time job in New York. Unlike many of you, I didn't make a career as an actor. I got scared during the Depression of the early 90s, and I took a full-time job with the American Society of Magazine Editors, and I stayed there for 26 years. And of course, all that time, living in New York, close to Michael, and our friendship remained throughout all of those years. When I retired 6.5 years ago, Michael said, I obviously couldn't afford to stay in the city any longer, unlike those of you with actors' pensions. So Michael said, "Why don't you move to the Poconos with me?" And I thought, well, I've taken advantage of you, I think, a little too often. And then I thought about it, and I thought, what better place to be? We both grew up in the hills of West Virginia. Why not come to the hills of Pennsylvania? And so 6.5 years ago, I moved into Michael's house here in the Poconos, and I was able to be there when he became very, very ill in January of this year. And I will be forever grateful that I could. I will always remember I will always remember Michael's talent, his kindness, his willingness to help young people in the business. And all I can say is, Godspeed, Michael. You'll be in our hearts forever.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelli Rabke. Michael was my Uncle Henry when I played Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz at the Paper Mill Playhouse. It was the show that was my big break. And although I haven't seen Michael in many, many years, one of the things that for all of its ills and all that we can complain about Facebook, it is one of the things it does best is it does bring people together or allow them to stay in touch with people that they would not normally be in touch with. And I think one day Michael popped up on my feed, or he liked something, or the friend request came in, and we sent some messenger messages back and forth. He always asked about my dad. He and my dad became best buddies at the stage door, and he was just a really wonderful man, and someone I will always remember, and I'm very happy that I was able to be here today for this special occasion.
When all the world is a hopeless jumble and the raindrops tumble all around, heaven opens a magic lane. When all the clouds looking up the skyway, there's a rainbow highway to be found, leading from your window pane to a place behind the sun, just a step beyond the rain. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops way above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't
Hi, I'm Susan Scudder, and Michael's a very dear friend of mine. He was gifted, he was talented, he was very brave. He was a sensitive, an extraordinarily silly man. And he delighted in giving his talents and his gifts and his opinions. He was a very kind man who gave wise counsel, but he did not suffer fools gladly. And he was very quick to come to the defense of anyone that he felt was being maligned or being abused. And this got him into a lot of trouble with directors and producers, and cost him work, I think, because he was standing up for what he thought was right, and he always did. And I'm very proud to say that about him. His heart was huge. His creative talent was magnificent. And his ability to pick paint colors was extraordinary. Now, I met Michael in 2001 when we were both working at the Gateway Playhouse in Bellport, Long Island. Michael was performing in Jekyll and Hyde, and I was in rehearsal for Funny Girl. And the actors were all housed in the same facility, referred to lovingly as Camp Gateway, and it still is. One afternoon, the two casts were out on the lawn at an event where we were supposed to get to know each other and love one another, and I was drinking bad wine and slapping mosquitoes, and I saw somebody over very loudly talking about the drawbacks of the South Orange Maplewood school system. Well, I lived in South Orange, and I wanted to know who this person was, and the lady standing next to me said, "Oh, that's Michael Hayward Jones. He's playing Dr. Danvers Carew in Jekyll and Hyde." And believe me, I was absolutely gobsmacked, because I had seen Jekyll and Hyde the night before. And to me, Danvers Carew was this tall, elegant, British peer with impeccable posture and just sway over all he surveyed. This scruffy hillbilly that was standing out there waving his arms around and telling me about the drawbacks of the school system my children went to was somebody I needed to talk to. So I went up to him and I said, "How do you know about this?" He said, "I live in Maplewood." I said, "Well, I live in South Orange and I have a car. I'm driving here every weekend. You want a carpool?" And that is how I came to know the very best friend that I have ever had in my life. You know, Michael did a number of other productions at Gateway. He did Carousel with Jan Lee Herndon. And the last production that he did there was, again, a British peer, where he was playing Francis Beekman in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and he had a number with Elizabeth Stanley that stopped the show every single night. He was incredible. But I think probably Michael's best performance happened in the Miss Gateway pageant, because some of the guys decided that they wanted to have a beauty pageant, and Michael was going, "No, that's for the younger kids. I'm not going to do that." But they talked him into it. And so at the last moment, he ran up to his room and grabbed a bed sheet, pulled it off, pinned it around his breasts that he got from God knows where, and then went to the wig people and got a long flowing red wig and put on a lot of eye makeup, lots of blue. He was standing in line, and they'd interviewed all the other contestants, and they got to Michael and they said, and Missy, what is your name? And he said, "Amanda Reckonwith." He won. He got a tiara, a trophy, and a sash. One of Michael's favorite sayings was that he could handle a sewing machine and a chainsaw with the same skill. And he was right. His sewing machine expertise came in handy when I was directing a production way off Broadway of Moliere's The Forced Marriage, and he was playing the lead, and of course he wanted to do the costumes. So the two of us went into the costume collection and we spent an afternoon going through the racks. He was dancing through, pulling petticoats and pantaloons and long capes, and he costumed the entire show in one afternoon. Then he decided to do the alterations. He tore the gowns apart. Well, I was paying for the rental, and I was very nervous about the fact that, was he going to be able to get the things back together in time for me to return them to the costume collection and pretend that nothing had happened to them. But he put them together amazingly. They were absolutely beautiful and much better than what we had walked out of the place with. And his performance, he did his own costuming, and he borrowed another long curly red wig. There's kind of a pattern here. And he was beautiful. He was able to teach everybody in the cast how to stand in the proper position to show your leg off. He knew so much about theater, and he shared it with young people, with people who, like me, were interested but hadn't had the kind of training, obviously, that he did. I'm ever so grateful for what he taught me there. He also had a very great relationship with hammers, screwdrivers, pliers. He had a special affinity for drills. He knew his way around lumber yards and marble yards, and he could discuss how to build stuff with contractors. He owned an obscene number of fan decks for paints, and he could absolutely mix his own if he couldn't find what he wanted in them. I developed a 20-year relationship with a company called Planning Stages, which was the name he chose to invoice the work whenever he remembered to send a bill, which wasn't often. It began when Michael walked into my house. I'd been trying very hard for a long time to get the right shade of terracotta in my living room. I put on 7 or 8 coats, and when he finally walked in, it was kind of the same color as a bottle of Pepto-Bismol. Michael took me aside, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "Honey, I can help you." And oh my God, did he help. Michael's touch and influence is everywhere in our lives. Michael, over time, redesigned our house in South Orange, and he staged it when we sold it. He rehabbed and furnished a condo in Florida that was just indescribable in its tackiness. He redid most of the house along with Mark and your pal Bob Stockel. And a couple of years ago, while he was ill and couldn't come down to Florida, he was able to long distance go through redoing 3 bathrooms that had been built in the 1960s. He was on the cell phone in Bartonsville at Lowe's. Virgil and I were in Miami Beach at Lowe's there. And he would say, "Okay, run over to this aisle and look at this, da-da-da-da. Do you like it? Yes. Okay, fine. Tell me to buy it." He was absolutely incredible. It worked. He is our Florida contractor's favorite designer. Because, as Jose, the contractor, said, Michael knows what's possible to do and what's merely a decorator's wish. Michael was a giver. He liked to help others, and he wanted to make the world a better place for the people that he knew and loved. He could go into a dollar store and buy objects the rest of us would turn our noses up and overlook, and then he would use those very simple things to create something beautiful. He took the time to look for the lovely things in his life. Music was absolutely vital to his happiness. And he loved to set elegant dinner tables. Christmas was his shining moment. Michael liked to wrap any present that he was going to give very carefully and lovingly, because he respected the person that he was going to give it to, and he wanted them to know how much he cared. The world, especially those of us who were privileged to know him, is a much better place because of him. I miss him every day.